Alright everybody, I'm Logan Alec, I'm a CPA, and this is my stimulus update for Tuesday, April 28th. So I'm seeing a lot of comments saying that folks got their stimulus payment. Okay, that is so awesome. And in terms of the Get My Payment tool, it looks like it's working a lot better for many people. Some are still having issues with it, so it's obviously still not perfect. Rox and Roxanne said they got their stimulus last night. Get My Payment told them they weren't getting it until the 29th. NASCAR 38 lady said she got her stimulus on her rush card on April 27th, but the portal said it was supposed to be April 30th. I'm glad y'all got it early, but of course this goes to show that while the Get My Payment tool is improved, it's still not perfect. Alright, so in terms of updates, let's start with the IRS. So, thousands of IRS employees, okay, have apparently volunteered to go back to work. Reportedly, they're getting a 10% pay raise, with those in more riskier jobs like those who work in the mailroom would receive up to 25% pay raises. Now, what does this mean for you? Well, I haven't seen this, but hopefully as more IRS employees go back to work, this will mean that paper starts getting processed again. The IRS has not been processing paper tax returns, etc., for at least a couple weeks now. And some of you have asked questions that I answered here in the channel, asking, for example, hey, I did not have to file in 2018. I did have a filing requirement in 2019, but I paper filed my return. What can I do? Should I use the non-filers portal? I told you no, you can't use the non-filers portal if you have a 2019 filing requirement, okay? You basically have to wait for the IRS to process your paper tax return. Look, these IRS employees going back to work is a sign that things might pick up sooner rather than later in terms of processing paper returns, but then again, the IRS has not announced anything about processing paper returns again anytime soon. That's just me being somewhat optimistic and hopeful that this will happen. Also, IRS employees going back to work might mean that the Get My Payment tool, future tools the IRS puts out in the coming months, if there are any, might work better the first time around, okay? So I posted a video last week about how Mitch McConnell basically thinks that bankruptcy should be a legitimate option for states who are suffering severe revenue shortages in the wake of coronavirus. Well, yesterday he kind of clarified that statement. He basically said he's not saying that state bankruptcy is the be-all, end-all answer. It's just an option to be looked at, because he said that states have had financial problems that predate the coronavirus. Mitch said he's not interested in borrowing money from future generations to fix these old problems. But he also said, and I quote, "There probably will be another state and local funding bill, but we need to make sure that we achieve something that will go beyond simply sending out money." I personally think that's a very fair statement. Mnuchin, who's been fairly even-keeled throughout this whole thing, obviously rah-rahing his own department treasury, he came out and said, we'll win this war. If we need to spend more money, we will, and we'll only do it with bipartisan support. But while McConnell seems to be maybe not backpedaling, but kind of clarifying his remarks, and Mnuchin kind of portraying himself as a middle-of-the-road nice guy, Trump tweeted this yesterday. Why should the people and taxpayers of America be bailing out poorly run states, like Illinois as example, and cities, in all cases Democrat run and managed, while most of the other states are not looking for bailout help? I am open to discussing anything, but just asking. To be honest, I'm not sure that's an entirely accurate statement by the president, particularly the, in all cases, Democrat run and managed. There are red states that aren't doing too great as well, okay? And remember, even if Senate Republicans and Mitch take a softer stance with respect to the state and local funding that Pelosi and other Democrats are shooting for in the next relief package, Trump still has to sign it. But it would be a hugely unpopular move for him to veto a bipartisan relief bill, right? So we'll just have to wait and see. Trump's not the only one getting feisty this week, by the way. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer said just this morning that this administration has been an abject failure at implementing most of these laws, referring to the relief packages that have been passed since March. Anyway, what else is new, right? Politicians bickering and doing what they do. All right, now, I'm getting really tired of the misleading headlines that I have to keep clarifying, but I have to do it because people have been asking me about the $10,000 stimulus checks, and it's because they're seeing this headline from Meet Kevin: Congress demands $10,000 stimulus checks. And then I suppose to make himself feel better, he puts EIDL grants in parentheses afterwards. Look, said before, I'll say it again. These aren't stimulus checks. No legitimate news source is referring to the EIDL grants as stimulus checks. The only one doing this is Meet Kevin. Legitimate sources are not doing that because they know that would be incredibly confusing. Okay? But what Kevin is referring to here when he says Congress is demanding $10,000 stimulus checks is a letter from House Democrats to Mnuchin and the head of the Small Business Administration, Javida Carranza, saying, hey, instead of $1,000 per employee for small businesses for these grants, you need to give the full $10,000 to all the small businesses who applied for EIDL grants, because that's what we all thought would happen, right? And they kind of politicized it, blame the Trump administration for this. But here's the reality. The CARES Act says that small businesses may request an advance of not more than $10,000. The law does not say that the SBA has to give you, small business owners, an advance of $10,000. It does not say that the SBA has to give you an advance at all. What? You mean I can't just get $10,000 just for asking for it? Sorry. The CARES Act simply says you can request an emergency advance from the SBA of not more than $10,000. Whether it's granted or not, and if granted, the amount in which it's granted is at the discretion of the Small Business Administration. And obviously, they're not going to give 10 grand to everybody who's suddenly a small business owner and fills out the 5-minute application on the SBA website, which, by the way, still isn't open. You still can't apply, despite Meet Kevin telling over 1 million people last week that they can get their $1,000 stimulus check. The lapse in appropriations notice is still there. Anyway, now let's move on to questions. Rita says, I tried using the tool. The thing is, it asks for social security number. I'm a widow, so do I put my number in or his? I collect his because it is more money. Please help me. Well, Rita, I would try yours first, right? If everything's working properly, the stimulus payment will be made out to you, right? If everything is going right. But we do know that deceased individuals are receiving stimulus checks, though, okay? So if yours doesn't work, try his. But small chance of that, really. It's a very small percentage of deceased individuals who are actually getting stimulus payments, all right? So Rita, try yours first. If yours doesn't work, try his. Eileen asks, hi Logan, my ex-husband and I claim our son every other year. 2019 was his year, so he got the $500 for him. Any idea how split families are dealing with the division of this payments? Seems like each parent should get one half, but the government hasn't given any guidance that I know of. Any ideas? I mean, Eileen, you're right. There hasn't been any guidance here from the government on this. The CARES Act is silent. It's not like it says, hey, if you're divorced, you have to split it, the 500, 50-50. It doesn't say that. It seems that most are just trying to work it out between themselves unless, and this is, of course, treading on family law here, not taxation, and family law is obviously not my expertise. But unless there is perhaps a very specific language you could point to in your divorce settlement agreement, at this point, there's not really any recourse for you in the CARES Act itself or anything that Treasury has said, at least, because they've been silent on the issue. Sorry couldn't be of more help, but that's the situation we're in. Marie says, I have a Direct Express card, and I was reading under the SSA.gov, and it's saying something about you cannot use your Direct Express card, I guess, to put your qualifying children. You'll have to use another card. I don't understand that. Right, so Marie, if you don't file a tax return and you're on SSI or Veterans Benefits, you have until May 5th to report your children using the IRS non-filers tool so you can get the additional $500 for them. However, in that IRS non-filers tool, there's nowhere to input Direct Express card or any other debit card information. You can only input bank account, right, your direct deposit information, or leave the direct deposit information blank if you don't have a bank account, and in which case you just accept a paper check. So if it was just you, right, no children, you could get the $1,200 directly on your Direct Express card automatically. But if you need to report qualifying children using the IRS non-filers tool, you'll either need a bank account or you'll have to be willing to just wait for a paper check. If you don't report the children using the non-filers tool, then at this point, right, some in Congress have talked about wanting to change this, but at this point, the only way to get the $500 for them would be to file a 2020 tax return and claim them on there. John Stewart says, any news for adult disabled dependents? No, unfortunately there's not, and I'm very sorry about that. We know that many in Congress have pushed to include adult disabled dependents in future stimulus packages, but of course we don't know if there will be more direct cash payments. There's a lot of proposals, nothing's finalized of course, but, and I'll say this in closing, because I think it's going to be brutal. Right? By the way, McConnell, I didn't say this earlier, but he fired some shots yesterday. He said that Americans don't need tangential left-wing daydreams and that Congress shouldn't get distracted by pre-existing partisan wish lists or calls to paper over decades of reckless decisions that had nothing to do with COVID-19. Oh, and by the way, he said, I look forward to seeing all my colleagues next Monday. How about that? I am looking forward to it as well. I think we're going to have some real showdowns on Capitol Hill about the next relief bill. I think there will be more hills to die on, so to speak. Remember, the CARES Act, they had to get that thing out quickly. They had to do something, or there would have been blood on the streets, so to speak. But now, that sense of absolute urgency of having to get something out, that urgency that led to the CARES Act passing in March, I don't think we're going to see that absolute urgency. Again, I think there will certainly be a sense of urgency, right? Because this country is still deep in the woods. They're not out of the woods yet, right? They're not even, you can't even see the light, right? We're still in the woods. But nevertheless, there won't be that sense of absolute urgency that we saw in March of just having to get something out, right? I don't think we're going to see quite that sense of urgency in May. So I think the politicians may not be so open to finding middle ground. I think it's going to get nasty, and I look forward to talking about it right here on the channel. All right, but by now, take it easy. Hope you get your checks this week.